You shouldn't be here.
What?
This place is not for people of your kind.
What do you mean, my kind?
Leave now before I have to throw you out.
Okay, is that how it's gonna be?
Ma'am, for the last time, I need you to leave. People like you cause problems. This is the official record of Incident 921A, a case that would become a landmark example of documented karmic justice within the private security sector. The events took place on a clear Tuesday, October 14th, at the Northgate Galleria, one of Chicago's premier upscale shopping centers. What internal protocols from the Vanguard security firm would later attempt to classify as a standard customer engagement rapidly devolved into a textbook case of racial discrimination, unlawful restraint, and a catastrophic abuse of authority. The entire interaction, from its prejudiced inception to its legally damning conclusion, was captured in high definition from 14 different CCTV camera angles, providing an irrefutable, multi-perspective account of the incident. This wealth of digital evidence would form the cornerstone of the subsequent fallout, which included the immediate termination for cause of the security agent involved, a civil lawsuit that culminated in a settlement of $450,000 in damages, and a state-level investigation that ultimately led to the suspension and eventual revocation of Vanguard Security's operating license in Illinois. The catalyst for this institutional collapse was a single individual targeted for harassment, Commander Imani Wallace, a shopper who was simply browsing on her day off. Her assailant, the mall's head of security, was tragically unaware of her actual title, Commanding Officer of the Chicago Police Department's Hate Crimes Division. This is the chronological, frame-by-frame breakdown of how a routine afternoon of prejudice collided with the most uniquely qualified and surgically precise form of retribution imaginable, proving that sometimes the very system designed to protect can be wielded by those who seek to divide, and that justice, when documented, is absolute. The day had been unremarkable, a welcome respite from the complexities of her professional life. Commander Imani Wallace valued these moments of anonymity, the simple freedom of being just another face in the crowd. Dressed in worn-in jeans, a faded t-shirt from a concert she'd attended years ago, and comfortable sneakers, she was the antithesis of her uniformed persona. She moved with a quiet confidence through the polished corridors of the Northgate Galleria, the ambient noise of the mall a soothing hum. Her destination was Digital Apex, a high-end electronics retailer known for its curated selection of cutting-edge technology. The store was an oasis of cool, sterile air and the low, rhythmic whir of cooling fans. Under the stark, unforgiving glow of the recessed ceiling lights, rows of laptops, tablets, and professional-grade cameras were displayed like museum artifacts on minimalist white pedestals. Imani was considering an upgrade for her personal laptop, a tool she used for everything from drafting complex case analyses off hours to her burgeoning passion for digital art. She gravitated towards a sleek, graphite-colored machine, its 14-inch OLED screen displaying a stunning, color-rich screensaver of a nebula. The price tag read $5,500. Her fingers, long and practiced from years of both fieldwork and paperwork, lightly traced the machine's machined aluminum chassis. Her mind was already breaking it down. The processor speed, the RAM capacity, the solid-state drive's read-write speeds. She was weighing its graphical processing capabilities against the demands of the rendering software she used. This was a process of methodical evaluation, a quiet internal dialogue of pros and cons. She was so engrossed in her analysis, in this small pocket of civilian normalcy, that she was entirely unaware she had become the focus of intense scrutiny. From a small, windowless office tucked away behind a customer service desk, Kevin Fisher, the mall's head of security, watched her on a bank of monitors. To him, the image on Dome Camera 14C was not of a discerning customer, but an anomaly. He saw her casual attire not as a sign of comfort, but of a person who did not belong. He saw her focused examination of an expensive item not as interest, but as suspicion. His 20-year career in security had been built on a foundation of snap judgments and profiling, a series of cognitive shortcuts that had calcified into unshakable prejudice. He saw a threat where there was only a citizen. His internal monologue, later pieced together from interviews with his subordinates, was one of self-righteous justification. He was the guardian of this space, the protector of its perceived sanctity.
He ignored the 3 other casually dressed customers in the same aisle, his focus narrowing with a predatory intensity on Imani. He stood, his uniform stretched tight across his chest, and made a decision. He would perform what he called a proactive engagement, an intervention designed to make the subject feel unwelcome and encourage them to leave. He left his monitoring station, the squeak of his polished boots on the linoleum a prelude to the confrontation he himself was about to engineer. He walked with a purpose that was entirely self-generated, a sense of authority that was about to be checked in the most profound way possible. The CCTV footage captures his direct path, a straight line from his office to Imani, a collision course set by his own biases.
He believed he was in complete control of the situation, a miscalculation that would cost him everything. The digital recording from Dome Camera 14C shows the precise moment Kevin Fisher's stride breaks, his polished boots coming to a stop just inside Imani Wallace's personal space. His posture is a study in manufactured authority, shoulders pushed back, chin held high, a stance designed to intimidate. The store's ambient audio feed, scrubbed and enhanced during the subsequent investigation, picks up his voice, artificially deep and laced with a condescending edge. He began with a textbook passive-aggressive opening, a question masquerading as a threat. "Can I help you? The items here are quite specific." His eyes did not look at her, but rather swept over the $5,000 laptop, then back to her faded t-shirt, a clear, unspoken judgment. Imani didn't immediately turn. She offered a simple, dismissive reply, without breaking her focus from the machine's specifications. "Thanks, I'm just looking." This lack of immediate deference was not what Fisher anticipated. His procedural script required a subject who was either apologetic or easily intimidated. Her calm refusal was a deviation he could not process. The CCTV footage captures the subtle tightening of his jaw. He took a half-step closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial yet menacing tone. "Are you sure? We wouldn't want you to feel out of place. Perhaps another store would better suit your profile." The insult was delivered with a thin veneer of concern, a tactic designed to be deniable. It was then that Imani finally turned her head, her movement slow and deliberate. The camera angle from across the aisle, 12A, provides a perfect view of her expression. It was not one of anger, or fear, or offense. It was one of pure, dispassionate analysis. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, met his, and for the first time, Fisher seemed to momentarily falter. She was cataloging him, her mind processing his words, his posture, his tone, not as a victim, but as an investigator. Her response was clinical, a request for data. Uncomfortable for whom? And based on what objective criteria? The questions hung in the air, a direct challenge to his baseless assertion. This was the moment Fisher's professionalism completely fractured. Her refusal to be emotionally provoked, her calm and logical inquiry, was something his prejudiced worldview could not accommodate. He interpreted her composure not as dignity, but as defiance. His face flushed a deep red, a physiological reaction noted in the official report filed by the responding officers. He abandoned all pretense of subtlety. His voice rose, drawing the attention of a young couple examining headphones 2 aisles over. "Based on my criteria, I'm the authority here." The declaration was absolute, a desperate claim to power from a man whose authority was being quietly dismantled by simple logic. "Now, leave." Imani did not move. She stood her ground, her stillness a stark contrast to his escalating agitation. Her very presence seemed to be an indictment of his prejudice, and he could not stand it. She asked one final question, her voice still level, devoid of any emotional tremor, a question that would be replayed countless times in legal depositions. "On what legal grounds are you ordering me to leave this retail establishment which is open to the public?" This was not the question of a shoplifter or a troublemaker. It was the question of someone intimately familiar with the law. But to Fisher, it was the final straw. His internal narrative, later revealed in interviews with his colleagues, was that he was dealing with a professional agitator, someone who knew just how to push his buttons. He felt his control slipping, and he reacted not with procedure, but with brute force. "Listen, I'm asking you to leave the store. Your presence is making people uncomfortable." He gestured vaguely around the nearly empty section. He then took the final, catastrophic step. The timestamp on the footage reads 3:37:12 p.m. His right hand shot out, and he grabbed her left arm just above the elbow. The act was sudden, aggressive, and utterly illegal. A different camera, positioned near the store's entrance, captured the flicker of shock on the face of another customer who witnessed the physical contact. Under the Illinois Criminal Code, 720 ILCS 5-10/3, this was an act of unlawful restraint, a Class 4 felony. Fisher, in his blind rage, had just escalated a simple act of harassment into a serious crime.
He felt a surge of triumph, believing his physical action had finally won him the compliance he craved. He had no idea that his hand on her arm was not an assertion of power, but the signing of a confession. He had just physically assaulted the one person in the city he could least afford to provoke, and the 14 digital eyes watching from the ceiling had recorded it all. He thought he was exercising his authority. In reality, he had just handed her all the evidence she would ever need. The physical contact was a line crossed, a tactical blunder of catastrophic proportions. Imani Wallace did not recoil, nor did she struggle. Her body remained placid, but her focus sharpened into a point of crystalline clarity. The CCTV footage from the digital Apex entrance, camera 02A, provides a chillingly clear view of this moment. Her gaze dropped from Kevin Fisher's face to his hand clamped around her arm, then back up to his eyes.
Her expression was not one of fear, but of profound disappointment, the look of a superior officer witnessing a rookie make a fatal, irreversible error. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely above a whisper, yet it cut through the ambient store noise with the precision of a scalpel. You have just committed aggravated assault and unlawful restraint. I suggest you release me immediately. To Fisher, blinded by a cocktail of adrenaline and prejudice, this was not a statement of fact but an empty threat. He interpreted her calm as insolence, her knowledge of legal terminology as the rehearsed script of a professional agitator. He scoffed, a harsh, dismissive sound captured by the overhead microphone. You are being detained for causing a disturbance. You lost your chance to leave quietly. He tightened his grip, a foolish attempt to reassert a dominance that had already evaporated. He saw only one path forward: escalation. He believed that bringing in a higher authority, one he assumed would share his worldview, would vindicate his actions. Reaching into his pocket with his free hand, he pulled out his personal cell phone. The multiple camera feeds document this action from every conceivable angle, a ballet of self-destruction. The report from the responding officers would later note that he did not use his official security radio, a breach of protocol, but instead chose to dial 911 directly, turning a mall security issue into a police matter. As he navigated his screen, his thumb tapping the numbers, the narration of his own downfall was already being written. Imani simply watched, her silence a damning counterpoint to his agitated movements. She made no attempt to stop him, understanding that every second he continued on this path, he was providing more irrefutable evidence for the case she was already building in her mind. He put the phone to his ear and spoke with a voice full of manufactured urgency. Yes, I need police assistance at the Northgate Galleria, Digital Apex store. I have a hostile female refusing to comply with orders to leave the premises. She is becoming aggressive. The lie was brazen, a desperate fabrication contradicted by the 14 digital witnesses silently recording his every move. He had just filed a false police report, adding another charge to his rapidly growing list of offenses. The call was completed. The police were on their way. Kevin Fisher's grip on her arm was a declaration of victory. He propelled her forward, not with brute force, but with the smug, unyielding pressure of a man who believed he had won. They moved past the final aisle of gleaming electronics toward the anti-theft sensors that marked the boundary between his domain and the mall's public concourse. Every camera in the store, from the dome overhead to the discreet lens in the exit sign, tracked their progress, documenting the final moments of his perceived triumph. To Fisher, her silence was submission, her lack of struggle a sign of defeat. He was the enforcer, the gatekeeper, restoring order by ejecting an undesirable element. His internal monologue was a loop of self-congratulation. He had handled the situation decisively. He was already composing the incident report in his head, painting her as a non-compliant agitator and himself as the calm professional. He was just 2 steps from the threshold, from finalizing his authority, when she stopped. The halt was not a struggle or a jolt of resistance. It was a fluid, deliberate cessation of movement, as if she had simply decided this was the precise location on the floor where the next phase of the encounter would begin. The sudden stop forced him to halt as well, his forward momentum broken. For the first time since the confrontation began, they were face to face, equals on a chessboard he did not even know they were playing. Her eyes met his, and the analytical calm within them was more unsettling than any shout or threat could ever be. "What is your full name and employee ID number?" she asked. The voice was low, devoid of emotion, a simple request for data. The question was so out of context with his narrative of victory that it took him a moment to process.
Then, a laugh escaped him, a short, incredulous sound. He saw it as a desperate, pathetic attempt to intimidate him with bureaucracy. "I don't have to give you anything," he sneered, his grip tightening for a moment. "Now get out." Her expression did not change. Her hand, the one not being held captive by his, moved with slow, deliberate grace toward her purse. A flicker of alarm crossed Fisher's face. His training screamed weapon, but her movement was too calm, too casual. She unzipped the purse, reached inside, and retrieved a simple leather wallet. She did not flash it like in the movies. She opened it methodically, turning it so he could see its contents clearly. There, behind a clear plastic window, was a Chicago Police Department identification card. Her picture, professional and severe, stared out from next to the city's official seal. Beneath it, her name was printed in stark, official lettering, Imani Wallace. And below her name, a single line of text that caused the blood to drain from Kevin Fisher's face. A title that dismantled his entire reality in a fraction of a second. Commanding Officer, Hate Crimes Division. "I'm not asking as a customer," she stated, her voice as flat and hard as the polished floor beneath them. "My name is Imani Wallace. Badge number 955021.
And you, Kevin Fisher, I already read your name tag, have just committed, in plain sight and on camera, the offenses of unlawful restraint and harassment based on racial bias, a Class 4 felony, and a civil rights violation. The facial recognition camera at the mall entrance, its lens trained directly on them, captured the microscopic changes in his face. The arrogant smirk dissolved, replaced by a slack-jawed confusion, which then morphed into the pale, wide-eyed mask of dawning horror. His mind raced, trying to find a foothold, a denial, an excuse, but the laminated card in her hand was an irrefutable truth. He had not been confronting a loiterer. He had been assaulting the very system he was pretending to represent. She gently, almost effortlessly, pulled her arm from his limp grasp. "I suggest you contact your supervisor and an attorney. I will be back." She turned and walked away, her steps even and unhurried, leaving him frozen in the store's entryway. He watched her disappear into the flow of mall shoppers, a ghost who had just pronounced his professional death sentence. The triumphant incident report he had been composing in his mind was replaced by the terrifying echo of her words, a legal indictment that was already a foregone conclusion. His hand, still tingling from where he had gripped her arm, began to tremble uncontrollably as he realized he had not just made a mistake, he had provided the state's star witness with a signed confession. The call placed by Kevin Fisher to 911 was logged at 3:38:04 p.m. A standard patrol car, Unit 727, was dispatched from a nearby traffic stop and arrived on scene at 3:42:19 p.m., a response time of just over 4 minutes. The body cam footage from the senior officer, a 12-year veteran named Marcus Miller, provides a crisp first-person perspective of the events that followed. The audio feed captures the mundane chatter between Miller and his younger partner, Officer Chen, as they walk through the mall's automatic glass doors. They are discussing overtime shifts, their conversation punctuated by the squeak of their boots on the polished marble floor. Their demeanor is relaxed, anticipating a routine call, likely a teenager causing a disturbance or a customer dispute that had gotten out of hand. As they approach the entrance to Digital Apex, they see Fisher standing just inside, his posture a forced attempt at professional calm that fails to conceal the nervous energy radiating from him. He spots them and a wave of visible relief washes over his face. He believes his vindication has arrived. He launches into his prepared narrative before they have even fully entered the store. "Thank God you're here, officers. I had a situation. A female, non-compliant, became aggressive when I asked her to leave. I had to escort her from the premises for the safety of our customers." His words are a carefully constructed fiction, designed to frame him as the proactive authority figure. Officer Miller nods, his expression neutral, his body cam recording every word. He pulls out a small notepad. "Can you describe her, sir?" Fisher, emboldened, provides a description that is a tapestry of coded language and outright lies. "Black female, mid-30s, dressed down, you know the type. Real attitude problem. Started quoting laws at me when I told her to go." He is so lost in his performance that he fails to notice the subtle shift in Officer Miller's expression. The veteran officer's eyes narrow slightly. The description, particularly the detail about quoting laws, doesn't align with a typical disorderly conduct case. It's at this precise moment, as Fisher is mid-sentence, that Imani Wallace steps back into the frame of Miller's body cam. She had been waiting patiently by a nearby kiosk, allowing the scene to set itself. Fisher sees her and points a triumphant, accusatory finger. "That's her. That's the one." Officer Miller and Officer Chen turn simultaneously. The body cam captures the instant transformation. Chen's eyes widen in confusion, but Miller's reaction is immediate and visceral. His posture snaps from relaxed to ramrod straight. The professional neutrality in his face is replaced by a look of instant, profound recognition and deference. "Commander?" His voice is sharp, the question of formality. He knows exactly who he is looking at.
He had served under her command in the 17th District before her promotion. Kevin Fisher's triumphant expression collapses. The color drains from his face as he watches the officer he summoned for aid address the woman he assaulted with a title of authority he couldn't even comprehend. The power dynamic in the room didn't just shift, it inverted with the force of a tectonic plate, and he was standing directly on the fault line. Officer Miller's single word, "Commander," hung in the air, dismantling Kevin Fisher's reality piece by piece. The body cam of Officer Chen, now swiveling to focus on his partner and the woman he had just identified, captures the silent, professional exchange between the two officers. Miller gives a nearly imperceptible nod, a signal that this was no longer a routine call, but a serious internal matter. The entire focus of the two policemen pivoted away from Imani and onto Fisher, who now stood frozen, his pointing finger still ludicrously extended. Officer Miller took 2 steps toward him, his hand dropping from his notepad.
The friendly, procedural tone he had used moments before was gone, replaced by a voice as cold and hard as steel. "Sir, I'm going to need you to explain to me, in detail, what happened here. Start from the beginning, and do not leave anything out." The emphasis on the final words was a clear warning. Fisher began to stammer, his carefully constructed narrative dissolving into a pathetic string of half-truths and panicked excuses. She was suspicious. I asked her to leave. She refused. I had to... He couldn't bring himself to say he had grabbed her. The admission was lodged in his throat, choked by the sudden, terrifying realization of his actions. Imani remained silent, allowing Fisher to incriminate himself with his own faltering testimony. She didn't need to be the accuser. His own officers were now the investigators. At that moment, the mall manager, alerted by another employee about the police presence, hurried onto the scene. He saw his head of security being questioned and immediately moved to intervene. "Officers, I'm the manager here. I'm sure whatever this is, it's just a misunderstanding we can handle internally." Imani finally spoke, her voice calm and measured, yet carrying the undeniable weight of her office. It stopped the manager in his tracks. "There is no misunderstanding, sir. Your employee committed unlawful restraint, a Class 4 felony under the Illinois Criminal Code, against a sworn officer. This is now a criminal investigation. I will be securing a warrant for all unedited CCTV footage from this area for the past 2 hours. Please instruct your staff not to touch, alter, or delete any of it. Obstruction is also a felony." The words warrant and felony hit the manager like physical blows. The corporate liability, the public relations disaster, it all flashed before his eyes. Officer Miller turned to his partner. "Chen, get statements from those witnesses over there." He gestured to the couple who had been watching the entire affair with wide eyes. He then turned back to Fisher, his face an unreadable mask of professional duty. "Mr. Fisher, for my safety and yours, I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." The public humiliation was absolute. The click of the handcuffs was deafening in the suddenly quiet store, each ratchet a sound marking the end of his career, his reputation, and his freedom. The body cam footage followed as he was escorted out of the store he claimed to protect, a prisoner of the very system he had so arrogantly tried to weaponize. He had called for the law, and it had answered, just not for him. The aftermath for Kevin Fisher and Vanguard Security was not a slow decline, but a controlled demolition, meticulously documented and legally absolute. The 14 streams of high-definition video became the cornerstone of a swift and brutal reckoning. Vanguard Security, the corporate entity that had fostered Fisher's behavior through negligence, was the first to feel the financial shockwave. Within 72 hours of the incident, the Northgate Galleria's board terminated their $3.5 million annual security contract, citing unacceptable exposure to liability. The public relations fallout was immediate. Facing a civil lawsuit that legal analysts predicted could reach 8 figures, Vanguard's attorneys scrambled to contain the damage. The final settlement agreement with Commander Imani Wallace, reached to avoid a discovery process that would have unearthed systemic failures, was for $375,000. This was merely a prelude. The incident triggered a state-level investigation by the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. The warrant Imani had secured became the primary exhibit in an audit that uncovered a pattern of 17 prior complaints of racial profiling and excessive force, all dismissed internally. The evidence was irrefutable. Vanguard Security's operating license was suspended for 90 days, a crippling blow that led to the loss of 6 other major contracts and ultimately forced the company into Chapter 11 bankruptcy within the year. The entire corporate structure collapsed, all because one man's prejudice was finally and irrevocably documented. For Kevin Fisher, the consequences were far more personal. His termination was effective the next morning, a cold email from corporate informing him he was fired for cause. This designation stripped him of any severance package or unemployment benefits. His monthly salary of $6,200 vanished overnight, severing the financial lifeline of a man whose identity was entirely wrapped in his uniform. This was only the beginning.
The Cook County State's Attorney's Office, armed with the pristine body cam footage, indicted him on 3 counts: unlawful restraint, intimidation, and filing a false police report. He pleaded guilty to avoid a trial he could not win and was sentenced to 2 years of supervised probation and 200 hours of mandatory community service. In a stroke of karmic poetry, the judge assigned him to perform his service at a legal aid clinic in South Chicago that specializes in defending victims of civil rights violations. His professional life was annihilated. The state regulatory board permanently revoked his private security contractor license, citing moral turpitude. His 20-year career, built on profiling, was over.
He was legally barred from ever again working in any security capacity in Illinois. Financially, he was obliterated. Commander Wallace's civil suit against him personally resulted in a judgment of $75,000 in punitive damages. This debt, not dischargeable in bankruptcy, would follow him for the rest of his life, a permanent lien against any future earnings. He sold his home to cover legal fees and moved into a small apartment, a ghost in a city that now knew his name for all the wrong reasons. The local news had played the CCTV footage on a loop, turning him into a regional symbol of prejudice brought to heel. He was the man who tried to arrest the law itself. In stark contrast, Commander Imani Wallace's life proceeded with the same quiet competence she had displayed in the store. She returned to her office, leading her division with renewed purpose. The entire settlement amount, a combined $450,000, was donated in a lump sum to the Illinois Civil Liberties Union's litigation fund, specifically earmarked to provide legal representation for those who could not afford to fight back against discrimination. Her actions were never about personal gain. They were about reinforcing a principle. The video evidence from Incident 921A became a powerful tool, incorporated into the curriculum at the Chicago Police Academy as a mandatory training module titled De-Escalation and Implicit Bias, a case study. It demonstrated to new recruits how a situation can be catastrophically mishandled and how true authority is derived not from a uniform, but from composure and an unshakable knowledge of the law. Imani never sought the spotlight, but the case elevated her profile, making her a powerful symbol of professional integrity. Her calm dismantling of a bully became a lesson in the power of holding one's ground without losing one's cool. The incident was a minor annoyance in her week, but its resolution became a major victory for the community she served. The system, for once, had worked exactly as it was designed, not because it was inherently just, but because it was wielded by someone who understood its mechanics with surgical precision. One has to wonder, as Kevin Fisher sorted through intake forms at the legal aid clinic, surrounded by the very people he had once profiled, did he finally understand the true cost of his prejudice? Did he ever grasp that the woman in the faded t-shirt was not an anomaly to be removed, but the standard to which he was and always would be held accountable? Perhaps not, but the documented, quantified, and absolute nature of his downfall sent a clear message to anyone watching. Justice, when recorded, has a price tag, and it is always paid in full.